Started. Officially welcoming you all to our meeting today. And again, thrilled to have our guests. Russ will be chatting with us here in a bit, and we do have several Rotarian guests as well. I didn't see anything in the chat for, I lost the chat, for announcements, but if you have an announcement, please, or you are a visiting Rotarian, please let me know. With that, we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. All righty. Okay, Adam, I saw your note. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's see. Alicia, you are our invocation today. Is that correct, or is it not correct? I'm flipping my, got it. Okay. Alicia, thanks for sharing. I'll hand it to you.
Thank you, President Sue. So please join me in a moment of reflection and prayer that's you're comfortable with. As we gather here today as members of Rotary, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our service to fellow citizens and to our community, keeping in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas and on those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better world. Amen.
Thank you, Alicia. All righty. So I'd like to welcome our guest today. And Allison, I'll start with you.
Thank you, President Sue. Allison Kelly with Liberty House. And I was expecting two guests today. I'm just going to double check to see if we have either Jonathan or Vincenzo. And I do not think I see them. He may join later. Vincenzo Maduri has been approved for membership, and we'll be doing his induction next week. Jonathan Partridge, I'd like to introduce, if not today, then next week. And he is our new Community Engagement Director at Liberty House. Thank you, President Sue.
Thank you. And if you see him before Russ starts speaking, just let me know. Give a holler. And then President-elect Chayne, you had a guest?
Yes, President Sue, I have two guests. Well, I'll introduce our speaker later, but he's a guest speaker. And then my two other guests are Jenny and Mark Mills. I see Mark's face, but I saw Jenny signing him on. And they are, hi, Jenny. And they are recent residents of Salem. They moved here from Austin a few years ago, and Jenny and I race walked together. And it was actually Jenny's suggestion for today's program because she heard HIT, high impact technology, mentioned as having been on the Nova show. So we can give Jenny all due credit for today's program. So help me welcome Jenny and Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Well, thanks for joining us today. All righty. I didn't see any visiting Rotarians.
Oh, it looks like Allison's guests are here.
Okay, terrific. Go for it, Allison.
All right, can you hear me okay?
We can.
So President Sue and fellow Rotarians, again, thank you for the opportunity, Allison Kelly with Liberty House. And it's my honor to welcome one of our board of directors members, Vincenzo Maduri, who has been approved for membership, and he will be inducted in our club next week. And it's also an honor for me to introduce my guest, Jonathan Partridge, who is Liberty House's new Community Engagement Director. Jonathan has been on staff with Liberty House for 3.5 years, and is a graduate of Corban University and is just finishing up a master's degree, and it just brings incredible energy and fun to what we do. So thank you.
Thank you. Vincenzo and Jonathan, thanks for joining us here today. It's great to see you again.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Allison, I'm gonna keep it with you for, well, first I'm gonna step back a little bit. A couple announcements. I think everybody sees Adam's note in the chat that small grants close on the 12th. And if you have any questions about that, get a hold of Adam. Another announcement, I don't know if Teresa Lule is on yet. So in our Wednesday or Tuesday e-blast, you'll see in there that there's a fireside on the 14th next week. I'm just going to say next week, but check the announcement. It's the 14th, the Wednesday. Check the announcement for the fireside in the Zoom link, and we'd love to have anybody that's can join us. Of course, please come on into the Zoom, and particularly our new members. We'd love to have you there. And then Mr. Nelson, I think I saw you here. Word has it you probably watched the video last week, Barry Nelson, but wanted to share again your the letter that we received from Asset Mark. So wanted to share that with the group when you're here. Tim shared it last week as a bell ringer. Asset Mark is pleased to donate $10,000 to the Salem Rotary Foundation, doing business as Jerry Frank's Salem Rotary Amphitheater, in honor of Mr. Barry Nelson, who is a recipient of our 2020 Community Inspiration Award. Please note the donation is sent on behalf of Asset Mark. We created the award to honor financial advisors across the United States who have inspired others by supporting charitable organizations in their communities. Advisors are selected in recognition of their volunteer work, community leadership, and commitment to serving their local communities. This donation is to help further the important work you are doing in the communities you assist. And it's from Natalie Wolfson, the CEO of Asset Mark. So well done, Barry. And Brenna was sharing last week that this is quite the honor. Asset Mark is a very large organization, and this is besides being $10,000 to our efforts, this is a really big deal in the portfolio manager world. So thank you so much for everything you're doing to support the club and the amphitheater, and bringing concerts and all goodness down to the park here starting this summer. So well done, Barry. Thank you so much. Okay, then now, Allison, I will hand it off to you for bell ringers.
All right. Thank you, President Sue. All right, I did not receive any bell ringers in my email today. I did check my junk file and did a search. So if you have sent something, I would request that you just please put it in the chat box. I have two announcements, and then I know President-elect Chain has a bell ringer. I mean, I have two bell ringers, and then I know President-elect Chain has one. President-elect Chain, would you like to go first, and then I'll close
Sure.
with mine?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So I am ringing the bell. As most of you who have been program chairs know, it is a stressful day when your program is on the calendar, because you have to, especially during Zoom, that the person shows up. So I'm ringing the bell for Russ Monk, our program today, because he's been delightful to work with, and he signed on like at 11:45. I was so excited. So I'm ringing the bell for Russ.
Awesome.
Well done, Russ.
Thank you. All right, well, I will do the first of my two bell ringers, and if either President Sue or someone can keep, or maybe someone can keep an eye on the chat.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I am just ringing the bell in honor of spring and the flowers and the tulips and the daffodils, and also our children's garden here at Liberty House. I know several Rotarians, including our very own Richard Pine, actually helped us create and build that garden 5 years ago. And it took a lot of work. We had over $25,000 donated from a local landscaping, and that garden is beautiful. The vision was that when children come to Liberty House for their clinical appointment, they would see something beautiful blooming. And we have something blooming literally all year round. So just in honor of all Rotarians and in honor of supporting that children's garden. And you know, you'll see it if you drive by, swing by sometime, off hours. It's just stunning. So President Sue, please ring the bell.
There you go.
And then the second bell ringer I would like to do is also in Thanksgiving for all Rotarians. You've really provided amazing support for our services at Liberty House over the years. I know when I first came on board 7.5 years ago, the Rotary Club had just helped fund some furniture for our waiting rooms. And in that time period, as you know, we've done some expansion. We used to see about 350 children a year. And I just looked at our most recent stats. We saw nearly 700 children in our clinic last year. And that's just on our main campus. Unfortunately, it's a drop in the bucket compared to how many investigations go on. So we're continually, trying to support what we do so that children and families can have what they need. We have 8 therapists. We have several medical providers and just a really dynamic staff. So we are committed to our community. I would love to invite you to visit our website this spring. Instead of hosting an auction, we are doing Liberty House's first ever mega raffle. And it couldn't be easier to give yourself a chance to win one of 218 amazing prizes, including 10 grand prizes, and support this mission in a really fun way. We have 2,000 tickets to sell, and we've only sold 600. So if you buy tickets now, your chances of winning will be really good. There will be a live drawing on May 6th. And for complete information and a gallery of the prizes available, just visit libertyhousecenter.org, and the mega raffle is right there, and it'll take you to its special page. So again, hopefully it sounds like fun. It supports an incredible mission. It is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and everything that we can do to provide the right response also prevents abuse. So thank you, President Sue. Please ring the bell.
And then
Right.
I have one, Allison. I
Okay.
don't see anything in the chat right now. So for those of you that are in the building, real estate, or related industries, and are a member of the Home Builders Association, you recently received this month's chalk line, and that's going to be our new club on Northeast Lancaster. So there's a great story highlighted about the Epping family of several pages. But super cool for us to see it in real life, even though it's a drawing. But we're making great progress out there, and within the next month-ish, you'll start to see new activity if you've driven by and wondering why it's just sitting there. So I'm ringing the bell for our new club.
Thank you, President Sue.
Thank you, Allison. All righty, we are cruising through our business. I don't see any other notes in the chat, so President-elect Chain, I'm going to hand it off to you for our program.
Thank you, President Sue. I am really excited about this program. As you can tell when I was doing my bell ringer, I mean, there are tanks, there are things blowing up. We really can't get more intriguing than this program. But first, I'd like to introduce our virtual head table. Knowing that high impact technology intersects with hospitals, I've asked Cindy Linesar to sit at our head table. Cindy is obviously a Rotarian, and she's the community relations guru. I renamed you, Cindy, for Salem Health. I just like guru better. I think that's better. Chuck Swank is our other person at our virtual head table. Chuck served in Vietnam from 1970 to 1971. During the time, oh, I love the hat. He received the Bronze Star for his service. And as most of you may know, but some of our newer members may not know, Chuck is our treasurer for our club. So please join me in welcoming our virtual head table. Yay, head table. And now for our program presenter. Russ Monk is a part owner of 5 companies that create technologies to protect people in the military and public safety and hospital teams. He has not 1 patent, but 30 patents and the technologies that have been created here in Salem that he exports to 12 countries. So he just, when we were talking earlier, he was renaming himself because he had one of his other titles, Vice President of Exports, or anyway, busy man. With 30 plus years of management and an expertise in building supply chains, he and his team have created technologies that truly save lives. One proud moment for his team, and I love that he said his team rather than just himself, was receiving the 2016 Presidential Award of Export Excellence. Russ is a proud husband of 34 years, and I'm guessing an even more proud father of 2 grown sons. So please join me in welcoming Russ. Take it away, Russ.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm not a big time advocate of public speaking. At a funeral, I'd rather be in the casket than, giving the eulogy. But I'm excited to be here with everybody today. There's some really lovely things happening quietly here in Salem that I'd love to let you guys know about. And protecting people is our core. And that's what we're up to. I always like to start off with a bang. So if you would be so kind to hit the go button on the first video, this will be a fun way to start.
Yes, I will get that pulled up. Just a moment.
And if you could play that a second time, if you'd be so kind. So this is actually a blast wall for critical infrastructure like electrical substations and that kind of stuff. And one of our sister companies is a ballistics and blast lab here in Salem. And out in Central Oregon, they have a huge range where they can actually go up to 5,000 pound bombs. And so that was one of the qual tests we had to do for this huge project back in Ohio. And it was invented, designed, tooled, produced, and shipped from Oregon. And I'm very proud that we were able to do that with this technology. So it's fun to start with a bang. I'm honored to be part of just a really dynamic team of people. Good hearts, many hearts and many hands is what it takes to make what we do for a living. And there's just lovely people that I get to work with here. There's many soldiers that we have been able to protect, and many of them don't even know we exist. And that's really a fun thing for us. We like to be understated in what we do. If you would go to the next picture, if your next frame, if you would.
Is that the right one?
That's perfect. Yep. Okay. So in 2004 in Iraq, the Army sent out a solicitation to armor all their fuel trucks. And what was happening is the insurgents realized that all military runs on fuel. And so you have generators, hospitals, vehicles, helicopters, everything is running on fuel. And so there's not a lot of roads in Iraq. And so the insurgents realized that they could target the fuel tanker fleet, shoot it up, bleed it out, and then catch it on fire. And it wouldn't be just the truck that was on fire, it was all the vehicles behind the truck that was on fire. And so the Army asked industry to armor these trucks. And so my business partner and the guy that owns the ballistics lab, we sat down and did a weight offset of what the armor would take weight-wise to protect that rig. And what we realized is about a third of the fuel would have to be dropped to offset the weight. So we called the Army and said, in World War II, they invented a bladder that goes inside the jet fighter wing. And if it gets shot, it kind of heals and you can limp the airplane home and repair it once they get back. Why don't we do something like that on the outside of the truck? And that was a Tuesday. The Army liked this idea so much that they sent their head engineer to Salem on Friday. We had 3 days to make a working prototype, and it was ugly, but it worked. And so the engineer flew back on Saturday, met with the 2-star and all the vehicle commanders on Sunday. And Monday morning early, we got a phone call that said, we love this idea. We know it's rough, but we would like to get you to Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland to actually do a live test shoot. And we're going to spray a 5,000-gallon truck at the same time. How long will that take you? And you don't have much time. And I looked at my business partner and kind of mouthed, 2 weeks. And he went, 2 weeks. And there was one prototype in existence at that point. And so we hung up and said, okay, heck with sleep, here we go. And about 3 hours later, we got a hot phone call that said the Pentagon has moved this to the #1 problem on the planet for the Department of Defense. You have to be at Aberdeen Proving Grounds on Friday. So we had 3 days to put together all the components, all the people. We all flew in and landed at the military testing center. And by the end of the weekend, it was approved for military use in a war zone. So it was literally 10 days from a raw idea to military approval. And then 3 weeks later, we're in Kuwait setting a factory to retrofit all the trucks that are coming in and out. And at the peak of this program, they were actually flying 747s full of drums of the resins and the materials it took to protect the trucks. The most expensive place on the planet to produce anything is in the middle of a war zone. And so what we did is we talked with the Army and said, you know, we solved the problem immediately, but realistically, it's better to take this back to the factory and before the vehicle is fully assembled, be able to put our protection on it. So let me show you how the technology works, and then I'll walk through that a little bit. But if you would do the next video, the high-speed video of the bullet. And we'll probably play it twice if you'd be so kind. So that is a 30 caliber bullet. Think of a 30-06, and that's about 5,000 frames a second. And it instantly seals. And then there's a reactive chemistry that's mixed into the coating that actually uses the fuel as a catalyst, grabs it and swells and creates a cork that never leaks again. And one of the fuel trucks in Iraq ended up with over 800 bullet holes in it, and it never lost a drip of fuel. And again, the young men and women were never in harm's way because the fuel stayed in the truck. And it's a great honor to be able to create something like that. One of my favorite days as a business guy, I was working at a military trade show in DC, and this young commander came up in his BDUs, his battle dress uniform, and he stopped right dead square in front of me and said, "Who invented this ... technology?" And I laughed and I said, "Well, that'd be me and this guy." And he reached his hand out and he said, "I'm living because of what you do." And I said, "Can you tell me about what happened?" And he said, "We were up in northern Iraq and we got hit by a huge IED. And then my windows of the tanker truck start shattering from the bullets rounds hitting it." And he goes, "I didn't know what to do. So I looked back in my mirrors and the rear tires were on fire. The actual IED had lit up the rear tires. So they just drove back to the base. They opened the gate, pushed them off into the gravel and drank coffee as the wheels burned off. And they never lost any fuel and it never lit up." And he said, "If I had to decouple that truck in the middle of a firefight, I'm a dead man. I owe you my life." And it was just, wow, what a phenomenal day as a businessman to actually have created something like that. And there are many stories to that effect, but it warms my heart to know that some guy gets to talk to his grandkids, hopefully because of what we do. So that technology had worked really well, and the US government is our #1 customer today. And about 4 years after its invention, we got permission to start exporting. And so we've shipped it to Canada, was our first country, but we've exported it all over the world. And our business model is a little unique. I never want to learn German labor law or the UK labor law or Australian labor law. So what we do is we find companies that have military contracts, or it's actually the military themselves, and we bring the technology in. Here's equipment, here's training, and here's secret sauce. And we will teach a local company how to make the product as a finished good in their own country. And it creates jobs in the country, and it creates jobs on this side as well. And because of that model and the success we did, that's why we won the Presidential Export of Excellence Award. It was a tiny company, huge honor. And I think that was the first Oregon company in something like 22 or 23 years or something like that that got that honor. And, fun stuff, that was really cool. We then said, okay, what else can we do? And so we started inventing other technologies for critical infrastructure. And that blast wall that we showed at the first beginning is one of the technologies. There's a huge substation in Ohio that had to have protection from bombs, bullets, hurricanes, tornadoes, all kinds of things like that. And they actually had to be able to erect it and knock it down like a Lego set. And we had it on yellow notepads when they asked us to design this in early June. And the deadline was, it had to be done by the end of Halloween, October. Okay. And it was a raw idea in early June. And so we invented all of the technologies, tested it, manufactured it, and it was 88 truckloads of product out of Oregon that shipped to Ohio. And Halloween morning at 11 o'clock, the last piece clicked in and we all fell over. So I'm proud that there was a lot of ingenuity. It was 30 Oregon and Southwest Washington companies that were touching that project, which is really fun to bring that kind of horsepower together. So if we could go to the next picture, if you'd be so kind. And if anybody has questions, don't hesitate when we're done here, we'll go that way. So one of our sister companies is a company called Watershed here in Salem. And if you see the Salem Police Department and the firefighters and that kind of stuff, the jackets that they're wearing, we make here in Salem. High-end Gore-Tex shop, and we ship all over the country from here. And about a third of our production is actually other people's business. We make combat helmet straps and B-52 bomber seat covers and all kinds of weird things out of our Salem plant. About this time last year, I woke up on a Friday morning and I went, you know, we make big body parts. Why aren't we making PPE? And so I called our state representative that I've worked with in the past, Paul Evans, and I asked him, you know, who do I talk to in this? And he said, as coincidence would have it, we're going to meet with Salem Health today at about 1 o'clock. Do you want to just throw your hat in the ring? And I went, absolutely. We've got horsepower. We've got design capabilities. We just don't know how to plug in. And so at 1:15, I got a phone call from the head buyer at Salem Health, Carl, I don't remember his last name, but Carl Wright, that's it. And he said, we love this idea. And I said, okay, we're a design house. Nurses are not very bashful. Please tell us what they like or don't like about what we're using right now. And if you have samples I could pick up, we could kind of look at that. So at 4 o'clock, we picked up the samples and the feedback of what they liked or didn't like from that. And so we, over the weekend, we made prototypes. And on Monday, we handed it to Salem Hospital. And on Tuesday, we got approval. There's 4 departments, as I understand it, that has to approve the use of that. By Friday, we were in production and didn't know it at the time, but Salem Hospital was so desperate for product. They were starting to look at being able to cut up garbage bags and making some form of PPE because the entire national pipeline had just collapsed. And so we started producing it. And the early part, we were delivering twice a day in my wife's van. And they were fanning them through the hospital. And then when it went to once a day, and then it went to a couple times a week, and now it's once a week. And from that crazy jump about a year ago, we've now made almost 700,000 cover gowns, the PPE cover gowns. After about 150,000 of them, the material was not available. We were competing against 49 other states and the federal government and the VA and a whole bunch of other departments. So we're a technology company. We invented our own fabric. And the last 500,000 plus has been the fabric that we invented, that we had to get qualified and do all the things needed for that. You know, Salem Hospital, San EM, Samaritan Group, Salem Clinic, a whole bunch of doctors' offices, a whole bunch of old folks' homes, and, you know, managed care homes and things like that. You know, and for us, you know, right in the heart of a pandemic, we actually had to hire people, and we expanded our production in that crazy time. That took a lot of art to be able to build something like that and not have everybody compressed into a building. So we had to fan our production out in a number of places around the valley. And what was really fun, right in the heart of this, there was a requirement by the federal government and the state government that the hospitals had to beef their stock up. So we were doing 10,000 a week with them, and we got the request to double. And it was a stretch to get to 10,000 a week. And so it took us about 3.5, maybe 3 weeks, somewhere in that range, to double. And so we were making 20,000 gallons a week with our group in this craziness. So you know, again, many hands and many hearts touch that. I can't take responsibility. The crazy idea is my part. And then how do you bring the pieces together and the technology and the materials together? But then there's many hands that help make this happen. So very proud of that as a technology. Can we go to the next frame, if you would? So then, crazy idea wise, I started looking at, if there was the big earthquake, there are towns like Yachats they have a bridge north and south of them is an island. If there's an earthquake, you know, think of the big one, and Brookings and other places around the country, around the state. And so the ability to pre-place strategic materials, PPE supplies and things like that was kind of started percolating. And then the fires happened up the canyon. And what happened is I called Red Cross and I said, what does everybody forget when they evacuate? And they said, toothpaste, toothbrushes, stuff like that. So we bought a couple $100 worth of dental hygiene, and I went to the fairgrounds and dropped it off. And I looked at it was the whole range of emotions. There was lovely people, everybody pushing to try to bring supplies in, deep tragedy. People already known that they'd lost their houses and feared for their animals and feared for some of their neighbors and things like that. So I sat back and I realized that if we could create a system of an emergency shelter system and pre-place these, so that red crate, the black part of that is actually a military grade tent made in Eugene that will sleep 8 people. And in the crate, there's enough supplies for 14 days for 8 people: food, cots, water, MREs, things like that, first aid, pillows, things like that. And that the ability to pre-stage these is the critical part of that. And it's a 40 by 48 pallet. So the whole world is used to moving, classic pallets. So it makes it easy to do. We can forklift, pallet jack, and then airlift. We actually have it made with the slings on it, so you could lift them up that way. If I had 19 of these, I could have in about 3 hours set up a village in a day at the fairgrounds and had an evacuation point that 150 people could have landed into. And it would have, it would have enhanced the event. And then I think in systems, so you actually have to have a management of all the materials that are in that material. The water has to be cycled out every 2 years, the MREs every 3 years. First aid, has a shelf life and things like that. So Oregon Corrections Enterprises, OCE, actually has a group of people that could manage the backside of this to help look after the materials. In the heart of this ramp up of the pandemic, Oregon had 300,000 masks already made. And when they went to pull them out of the warehouse, the elastic had rotted off. And so they actually had to, cut all that and get that redone. That really made a comment that you have to think about the backside of this program to look after the material, so it's always fresh. And the MREs are used by the military department, so you can cycle them in to get them, have a home and that kind of stuff. Working hand in hand with the Oregon Emergency Management and Washington Emergency Management right now about pre-placing these. And we have different colors, like a bright blue one would be for PPE, a yellow one could be for comm systems, the red one's for shelters. You can dial this in. And what Brookings, Oregon needs is different than Boise, Idaho, or Billings, Montana. So the local emergency managers can define what they want in these surge kits. And that makes the ability to tune it to the local, all disasters are local. So, and why we chose 14 days is because historically when their event happens, one, that's how much I could stuff in that tiny cavity. But if an event happens, the city and the county are the first responders. And if it blows past that, it goes to the state. And if it blows past that, it goes to FEMA. And it usually is 10 to 14 days-ish before FEMA engages and American Red Cross plugs in and things like that. The ability to pre-stage them, if the bridges all blow out, the Red Cross materials and all the supplies are stranded. So that's why we designed this to be pre-staged at the point where it could be used that way. I talked with the city of Salem, and I want to be cognizant of my time. I'm not sure, give me a warning if I'm getting long here. So I talked with the city of Salem in the mayor's office, and he asked, could you make this a homeless shelter? And I went, yeah. And so we met with the Church in the Park and a number of the different groups, and they realized that it's not a safe structure for that. It's more emergency management. So what we're doing right now is we step back, and we're a technology company. So we actually are in the throes of designing 3 versions of homeless shelters that would be easy to plug and play and that would be made here in Salem as well. So those prototypes are a couple weeks away from seeing the light of day. And I'm excited that we could bring our craziness and all military technologies and all the other things that we do to bear on that way. Is that all my pictures? I don't know if I had any more. I think that was it.
Yep, that was all of them.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So proud to be a Salemite. I live right behind Life Source in South Salem, and I love where we live. And when I travel all of these countries, I always compare Oregon to what I see in the world. And it's like this part of Germany looks like Staten. This part of Jordan looks like Madras. It's just funny to see how beautiful we have it here. And I love creating jobs. In my heart, when people have jobs, they're adding to the pile, and when they don't have jobs, they're pulling out of the pile. And so job creation is a big part of what we do. And you know, being able to protect people is the highest part of it. Our core philosophy is add value or get out of the way. And if we can't add value, I'm the first one that throws me out, because we're not, it's a waste of everybody's resources and time. And, you know, to be able to protect our troops and protect our hospital people and hopefully protect people that are stranded or impoverished by the, you know, events, you know, weather or earthquakes and things like that. You know, it's really, really fun to be able to create that here in Salem and bring those jobs to bear that way. So I'm way open for questions and just honored to be here. And
So-
thank you everybody for having me, truly.
Oh, Russ, this is, I think, kind of jaw dropping is what I'm doing right now. It's like, oh my gosh. So I'm sure we have lots of questions. Trisha has one in the queue, but how did you get started?
Life is not a linear event. And I went to college to be an accountant. And I worked for a CPA's office, and about 6 months into that, he goes, Russ, you're good at anything that you like to do, but this is not you. What do you want to be when you grow up? And so I grew. I said I'm not sure, and I became a purchasing manager, and I learned how to build supply chains and take a concept from a raw idea to a finished production item. You know, lovely life skill. And then I've always been a quasi inventor, and about 15 years ago, I found shoulder to shoulder with some of my business partners. I'm more of an entrepreneur than entrepreneur. I work better in a team. And I don't ever want to reconcile visa bills. I have a business partner that loves that. Thank God there are those of the world that do that. So it's a non-linear event. To be able to create the military technologies, that was a fluke. We were just at the right place at the right time with the right technology and the right people and the right problem. And we had all the right pieces just to snap together. Normal gestation on a military project for something like that is 18 months to 2 years. And it was live, literally in production in a foreign country in about 8 weeks. So really fun that way. And there are so many good creative people in our region here. It's just fun to plug into all of that horsepower, mental horsepower and spiritual horsepower to be able to do that. So non-linear event is the best answer.
Okay, I like it. That's great. So Trisha is wondering the estimated cost of the emergency pallet that you showed us.
Sure. The configuration right now that we have, that we've worked with Oregon Emergency Management and some of the key people that we work with, it's about a $22,000 kit. 80% of that is recyclable. The most expensive part is the tent. So 20% is consumable. So you pay for it once and then you just replace the supplies. Over life, you know, it's got a 10, 15, maybe even more life. So that configuration right now is $22K. But it could be morphed based on what's needed.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned, but Ron Kellerman's asking about the manufacturing facilities besides. So you have Salem.
Yeah, we borrow a lot of horsepower. Okay, we're the technology development side. The chemicals that are made for our coating systems, they're made in Texas and Louisiana. Oregon Corrections Enterprises here in Salem and up in Wilsonville, they've done some work with me that way. Our manufacturing facility for Watershed is about 35,000 square feet just off of Portland Road. You know where the Portland Road goes underneath the railroad tracks?
Yeah.
Just west of that, you'll see a blue building that says Watershed on the end. That's us.
Oh, really?
There.
Okay.
Yep. And then the Ballistics and Blast Lab is just off of McGillcrest here in Salem, and the big blast range is in Central Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and I'm not bashful to borrow manufacturing horsepower. Every project is unique, and so you literally plug and play the horsepower it takes to win that project. And then most of the military stuff that we do lays down, you know, they have 800 vehicles to do or something like that. So you want to build it in a way where we don't have a tremendous amount of overhead, and overhead during downturns is really devastating. So you have to balance that part of it.
Absolutely. In my past life, I think myself and my work partner brought a group of teens to your site off McGillcrest, like a long time ago. Yeah.
Is that when all the young kids were putting on the combat helmet?
Yep.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And then Dr. John is in the chat. It says, I'd like Russ, to talk to Russ about the possibility of taking these concepts and ideas to Salem, India, which is our sister city.
Yes, the State Department governs some of what I do, and in the export, most of what I do falls under Department of Commerce. But that would be a good natural conversation. And again, we design things to be able to pick it up and move it to anywhere and produce them anywhere. So that would be a potentially live conversation. I don't do anything in India at this point. I've had a number of conversations, but I don't have anything cooking in India right now. Yeah.
All right. And then Vincenzo in the chat again is wondering, Russ, shouldn't this be pitched on Shark Tank?
Well, it's a mature technology actually, but the surge kit and the homeless shelters, I think those could be pitched that way, but we fund our own R&D. And so what we do is crazy idea, it moves a lot faster if you do your own R&D. You're not dependent on state agencies or federal agencies and things like that. And we own all our mistakes and boo-boos and never do that again. And that's where you learn how to move a technology forward. So that's part of that. The critical infrastructure, it has a national footprint that's bigger than us. So that would be one that could be pitched there. We had to develop 6 technologies to deal with that. And that was really an exciting technology push. Yeah.
Fascinating. And you guys are welcome to chime in. So Mark, do you want to ask your question? So Mark Mills has a question about the NOVA program was great. Russ, can you remember the year or show number?
Sure. So out of the blue, one afternoon, I get a phone call from a guy and he says, "Hi, this is WGBH in Washington or in Boston. Would you be interested in being on NOVA?" And I kind of went, "That NOVA?" And he went, "Yeah, that NOVA." And they said, "We're doing a program called Smart Materials." And they actually had 4 one-hour segments of different technologies and different things. One of the 4 was Smart Materials. So what they did is they flew out a filming crew. And if you look up NOVA and do battle jacket, one word, BATTLEJACKET, one word, it's about a 6.5-minute video of what was put on NOVA. And they did a deep dive of the technology, showing the live shoot. We did a tank that was coated and protected and one that wasn't. And it immediately shows how much the unprotected tank just bleeds out and is a fire hazard and can really be horrible that way. Did a deep dive on the ballistic lab and a show and tell of how the technology works and all that. I couldn't have paid for better advertising, because what's funny is that program will show in Germany, and all of a sudden I get these phone calls out of Germany. "Tell us about your technology." And it's like you can see when they ping around the world in the different places. It was an honor, when you on your bucket list, one of mine was to be on PBS, and that was a bucket list checkbox for me. That was really fun.
Excellent.
And I warmly invite anybody to see that. It's a great way to show that technology and the success we've had with it.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. And then Jane, you had a question you wanted to ask Russ.
Yeah, hi Russ, Jane with the Center for Hope and Safety. It's nice to see you just a short time after the meeting that we had together.
Yes.
And I just, this made me think about, I know we're having conversations about how might be able to help victims of domestic violence and human trafficking potentially flee. It made me think, for years, I have been very worried about the nonprofits that provide emergency services if there is an earthquake, and like what would happen if our shelter wasn't available and they couldn't go to a mass shelter, and and every nonprofit has different issues of what that would bring up if something happened. And so just want to put a bug in your ear to maybe think about, in your spare time, about how we might be able to help nonprofits be ready, so they can be right there able to respond and help folks that are going to need it.
I love that. We are part of the solution, but if you have an anchor technology that you can bring the solution, then you bring all the other components to it. And the surge kit, that whole tent sets up in about 2 minutes. and then it's about 20 to put the installation in and all the other things like that. Having all of the materials right there, and if you wanted to have baby diapers and toddler foods and things like that in that kit, you can tune it to what's needed in that. So that would be a really fun exercise to look at what it would take to do that. Stabilize the patient, stabilize the environment. There's a lot less trauma if you have a bed to sleep on and someplace warm and some food and water and things like that. That was the genesis, just watching the fairgrounds. That was the genesis of what we could do to possibly help with something like that. The idea to tune it that way would be a lot of fun. In working with Jane, one of the questions that I got asked in one of our little homeless shelters was, could you make a version of this that could be geared for domestic violence and the ability to have a landing spot where someone could land? And I've never been asked that before, but the answer is yes. And then I was asked, could you design the cuddle factor into this structure? And I said, okay, I've never been asked that one either. So we created a couch system and some really simple bunks that the mom or whoever, dad if needed, could be looking at the children if they're sleeping on the bunks and be able to have a couch to cuddle with and things like that in this little teeny shelter. And the answer, that's what we do for a living. And so we tune it based on the need. And then we look for key input from the people that know what they're doing and have seen this, and ask, does this make sense, or is this a smart idea or not? So these working prototypes that are going to be coming into existence, I warmly invite everybody that's on the call to come see them. I'm proud we're making them here locally, and it'll be really fun to see if we can help with the homeless shelters and the emergency shelters like that. The pop-up tent system that Sleeps 8 is more emergency management geared than a landing spot for homeless, but it's two different technologies for two different problems. And so that's the idea there. In an earthquake, all of the buildings actually have to have a structural engineer go in and reassess them and see if they're safe or not to go into. And you have to house people somewhere in that interim. So on the Oregon Emergency Management side, that's a big part of that conversation, as well as where could you very quickly pop up a mini city if you had to give that time needed that way.
That's perfect. Wow, fascinating. Then Ken, you had a question for Russ.
Hi. Let's see.
That didn't sound like Ken.
Oh, hi, Sherry.
Just a minute, let me mute, just a minute.
Yeah, Russ, really fascinating session. I was just wondering, in your company, kind of what's your secret sauce for giving you the sort of agility that you guys obviously have to get to market so quickly? A lot of people and companies can't do that. You've discovered something that's pretty unique. How would you describe that?
You bet. I have in my repertoire, there's three business partners and I at the helm, and each of us has our expertise. So I'm the head of engineering, and I'm the business development, kind of the business manager. He and I are two crazy guys that just think on crazy inventions. And what we do is we lay the problem on the table, break it out into pieces and say, is there a technology off the shelf that you can pull in and solve that problem? Jump off that bridge then. If not, then you step back and say, what technology needs to be invented to solve that problem? And I have, over the years, I built a supply base. There's probably 100 companies in my horsepower behind me that I can say, I need chemical engineering done. Some of the best chemical engineers group believe in us, and then our success we've had with the military, I get to plug into that brain trust. Mechanical engineers, civil engineers, electrical engineers, all of those horsepowers are in there. And because of the strategic alliance and the trust that we built with everybody, that add value or get out of the way belief, I have access to all that horsepower, and I don't have to own all that horsepower. And I'm a hopeless loyalist. So if we develop something together, they get the work from the day we start, onward, and it becomes a major program for them. And if it goes down in flames, we all bear the shoulder together. Hey, that was a good idea. Let's learn from that. So probably the biggest point is it all starts with trust, that we will show honor to each other and build the technologies to solve problems. Being a little company that solved the worst problem on the planet for the Department of Defense, we got more phone calls, and I was air traffic control. That's not us, but let me point you over here. That's a great idea. Let's put that in the, let's, you know, throw energy at that and that kind of stuff. And that networking of being able to have a team of really talented subs and really talented teams behind us gives us the horsepower that I don't have to own. But I, in turn, give the business to them for working hand in hand with us to solve the problem. And so that's a kind of a fun model. I'm very proud of it. We backed into it. It looks really bright right now, but we backed into that. We didn't know what we were doing at the very beginning and just borrowed horsepower, and it grabbed.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Russ, what kind of jobs, you were talking about the different types of jobs that you have at your Salem operations. What maybe just share summary wise a range of what that looks like.
So in the Watershed facility, it's a high-end cut and sew. We have computerized cutting of fabric and specialized rolling for big rolls of material and sewing and heat laminating, you know, things like that. The stripes, the reflective stripe that goes down a motorcycle cop's pants, you know, we actually laminate that here in the building as we make all of the Gore-Tex jackets and things like that. Then in the other parts, there's welding. The ballistic lab has a weird range because they blow up vehicles for a living and things like that. So there's a weird range of talents that way that you need there. The PPE program, we did the computerized cutting of the materials, and then there's a welding that goes underneath the arm and a packaging. And so we actually had to ramp up the welding and packaging of that to make 700,000 of them.
Wow.
And it's all based on what the function is. The homeless shelters that we have going, there's going to be a lot of assembly work and a lot of specialized coating that we're spraying on them and things like that. So we'll ramp that up here pretty shortly as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. So to wrap up, I just have to say you are amazing as well as absolutely delightful. It was just so I'll use fascinating. I think you're blowing our minds, and you can see in the chat that that it's been really an amazing conversation, and we appreciate you taking the time to come join us. In your honor, we will be making a gift to our very own Salem Rotary Foundation in your name. So thank you so much for what you do for the world. I guess I should say that, right? So it was a true pleasure, Russ, to have you with us. So thank you so much.
And to have, you know, Salem Hospital, you know, use that many gowns and have that not be an issue. What an honor to be part of that solution. How fun was that for everybody?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, your neighbors basically. Yeah. So that's amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. And to wrap up, Ginny and Mark, thanks for joining us. Ginny, thank you for the idea to have Russ here. So that was kudos to you. Jonathan and Vincenzo, it's great to see you both here today. And then just one more shout out to our Barry Nelson for his recognition from Asset Mark. Next week, John McCulley is our program chair, and our presenter will be talking about grape production challenges around the world. So look forward to seeing you all next week, and have a fantastic day and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.